Right, I'm struggling with this back and forth thing. I'm struggling with it because some people say there's a difference between accounts. The Garden of Eden was there for Adam and Eve to worship God and not do any work. But other people say, no, they were supposed to do work. So we'll look at Genesis chapter 2. There's the site. Go to the words. Nevertheless, it can be concluded that the two infinitive verbs with feminine pronomial suffixes in Genesis 2:15 refer back to the phrase, and there was no man to till the ground. Hebrew, adAmâ, feminine, in Genesis 2:5, in the context of 2:15, which is one of Adam working and watching over the Garden of Eden. This agrees with the grammar and context of the passage, and this is a part of Adam's key purpose of worshiping and obeying God, the Lord God. For Adam was not placed into the garden to be idle, but to work it, and further to take dominion over all living things and all the earth, to be fruitful and multiply and subdue the earth. In the next two verses, Genesis 2:16-17, it is stipulated that the Lord God commanded the man Adam, saying, and the Lord God commands the man, of every tree of the garden you may freely eat, and of the tree of knowledge of good and evil you do not eat of it, for in the day of your eating of it, dying you do die. Spiritual and physical death. This is the first time a command was stipulated in Scripture as given by the Lord God to the man. It further implies that mankind has free will to obey or not to obey. Significantly, it concerned life and death, good and evil. Consider the Hebrew phrase in Genesis 2:17b, which conveys this command. Here's the Hebrew interlinear. The Hebrew phrase, these words, these characters, appears in 1 Samuel and 1 Kings as well. In all these instances, the meaning intended is one of emphatically declaring the death of an individual. You will surely die. And because of the two natures of the man who was created in the image of God, physical and spiritual, this emphatic certainty of death implies two kinds of death, evidently immediate spiritual death, then eventually physical death. For man was breathed into by the Lord God with the breath of life, plural, receiving a physical and a spiritual life. Look at that in Genesis 2:7 by clicking there. Implied in the Lord God's command to not eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil was that Adam was created as a moral being with the power of free will. Recall that man was created in the image of God. Genesis 1:26-27, which image was intended to reflect the righteousness of God, because God is righteous. Jeremiah 23:5-6. The placement of the tree of knowledge of good and evil in the center of the Garden of Eden was evidently a test to the man, an opportunity for Adam to choose to obey God. For the righteous character of God cannot permit unrighteousness in his creation without just punishment and reconciliation due to the very nature of God. So God's creation of a being in his image with free will required the test of that being's character to ensure that his creation would not violate his character. And if it did, just punishment and reconciliation would be required. Note that the result of the failure of Adam to obey God caused his expulsion from the Garden of Eden. Genesis 3:22, then the Lord God said, behold, the man has become like one of us, to know good and evil, and now, lest he be put out his hand and take also of the tree of life and eat and live forever. It is made evident in view of this expulsion that man's immortality before the fall was not that of an inherent human quality, but a gift from God and the access to the tree of life given to him. We have 1 Timothy 6:16. So, Looking at Genesis chapter 2, 18 to 25, Jehovah God did declare it is not good for man to be alone. I do to make to him an helper as counterpart. In the process of doing this, God forms every animal of the field and every bird of the heavens and brings them into the man to name, thereby creating additional animals and birds after Adam was formed. But there is no implication in Genesis that God would be through creating animals and birds until after day 6 was over. We're getting a little cold here. And in the process of naming the animals, Adam did not find a helper, a counterpart of his own, whereupon God caused a deep sleep to fall on Adam, took on one of his ribs, closed up the flesh, and God builds up the rib into a woman, brings her into the man, and Adam said, "This one is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. This one will be called woman, for she was taken from man. Therefore it was declared, a man leaves his father and his mother and cleaves unto his wife. And they have become one flesh, and they are both of them naked, the man and his wife, and they are just not ashamed of themselves, whereupon came the end of God's creation work, just as accounted for in Genesis chapter 1. So we have all that there. So in verse 18, it's not good for man to be alone. You have the plurality of Yahweh Elohim with a singular verb, indicating the doctrine of the triune God of the Trinity. So at the end of the 6 days of creation, Morris says, God saw that everything he had made was very good. The last act of creation, however, was that of a woman. Hence, prior to this final work, creation was yet incomplete. Man especially was incomplete without woman. Okay. Now I want to get down to the point where in the disobedience, we have the change of the earth. We'll do that next time.